because I've done a lot of talking in the last 10 minutes, but it's from Gabriel. And he's sent a little email into us, and it goes like this. Hello. Firstly, thanks so much for all the work you are doing for giving an alternative to some of the media rhetoric on this topic. Can I offer a couple of points as constructive feedback after listening to the episode? I find you calling property investors small business owners irritating. And if this is the sentiment shared by many others, I wonder if it could be detrimental to the cause of changing the public opinion of greedy investors. If I own shares which ultimately give capital to listed businesses so they can invest and grow the economy, would I call myself a small business owner? Love your work, in brackets, still, exclamation mark, that's a relief. Regards, Gabriel.
This is really important to understand. So when you own a business, that means you own it outright. So unlike shares, where effectively I own a slither of a company, the only voting opportunities I get are to vote on large decisions that the board makes. So I don't have any influence or ability to change or affect strategy or do that type of thing. Now, when it comes to owning a rental business, I'm effectively in complete charge of owning that rental business. So that's why it absolutely is a small business, because in a small business, I'm actually employing people. So I employ the property manager, and ultimately decisions around improving the asset, decisions around doing preventive maintenance on the asset, running that business, I'm in control of all of those decisions. So to sit back and say that it's not a private rental accommodation business is completely incorrect.
To Ben's point, the fact that you're making the decisions and you're taking the risk, and there's contribution to the economy, and you take risk and responsibility. And we'll put a link in the show note how we've actually talked specifically about why we think property investors should be considered small business owners. But here's the overarching reason why it started in the first place. It was largely because we were losing the public perception battle.
Well, totally true. But I think it also comes back to there's this sort of age war, and there's sort of this class warfare sort of story going on. So Gabrielle talks about, a social good. If you want to be in a social good business, that's fine. But vast majority of people who invest for a return on their investment. I want to make a profit. The majority of people who are investing in property need a profitable return. Now, some people might want to get that balance right in terms of their social good, and that's their particular choice. And the other one that I also, hear a lot about in terms of you're not creating anything, so that you're not making anything out of your time, creating your resources, and if that's the argument around an existing asset, then that's also false as well. So let me give you an example. That if I bought a vintage car, and I then decided to sell or rent that vintage car out, I'm in the business of running a second-hand asset to actually make money off renting out my vintage car. And if you're going to argue that that's not a business because it's not a creative purpose or adding a resource, then you can also start to argue that buying a second-hand fish and chip shop is also the same. But I'm producing fish and chips. Well, yes, but you're producing them out of a business. So the reality is this framing story that's going on around not actually running a private rental accommodation business is false.
Yeah, well said, Ben. I remember when I was 23, I was still living in Perth. I lived just next door to the Jandakot airport, and I started getting pilot's lessons, and I got about 13 hours into my pilot's license. And I remember the guy that I was doing it with was an older gentleman. He was a mentor for me at the time, Ben. And he goes, you can negative gear one of these Cessna planes. And I went, huh? He goes, yeah, it costs you about 70 grand to buy your own plane. But what that would mean is you could rent it back to Jandakot Airport flight schools, and then it's effectively doing the same. And it sort of it opened my mind to the fact that I had this very pigeonholed view that negative gearing was just a concept for real estate. But the point of the story is this: that arguably, what someone else has done the plane, someone else has. And all I'd be doing is providing that back to the Jandakot Flying School for them to use it so that they could run a business. I would still be in the small aircraft business, even though I'm not producing anything.
But if it quacks like a duck, it waddles like a duck, it actually is a duck. And so it is a small business, and it's a private rental accommodation business. And I'll keep referring to it as that because I don't want the narrative to be hijacked by misinformation about greedy property investors owning 6 or 7 properties. I want the politicians to also understand that these are small business owners, and they are injecting tens of billions of dollars of their private money into a profitable business.